It was built right into our lifestyle before, right? Lifting heavy things, challenging our muscles, recruiting muscles.
If you feel your best, you can give your best to the world. We all want to be the best version of ourselves.
Focusing just on these 5 alone, it's amazing how much better you could feel.
Welcome to the Strength Changes Everything podcast, where we introduce you to the information, latest research, and tools that will enable you to live a strong, healthy life. On this podcast, we will also answer your questions about strength, health, and well-being. I'm Amy Hudson. I own and operate 3 exercise coach studios. My co-hosts are Brian Sagan, co-founder and CEO of The Exercise Coach, and Dr. James Fisher, leading researcher in evidence-based strength training. And now for today's episode.
Welcome back today. And if you are listening to this podcast, I don't know how old you are, but depending on your age, you may be able to recognize how much life has changed since you were born and since you were growing up. We can all recognize the ways in which our society has evolved technologically. There are so many advances that make our life easier, simpler, more convenient. We can do things faster. And, we appreciate that, right? But there are some potential downsides to some of the ways in which our society has changed over time, particularly when it comes to our health. So today's topic we're going to discuss is twofold. One is, the ways in which our society has changed and the mismatch that is created then between how we were designed as humans to thrive physically and physiologically and where we're at. And we're going to reveal the top 5 most important behaviors or habits that you can implement into your life that help you to more closely align yourself with how we were designed to thrive physically. So that is what we're going to discuss today. How are you doing, Dr. Fisher?
I'm doing very well today, Amy. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm doing great. So let's dive in and talk first of all about the case that you were talking to me about before we hit record here about just how much our society has changed. And can you describe to us the genetic mismatch that you were talking to me about between where we're at today and maybe how we were originally designed?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can think of things from kind of an evolutionary perspective, and we know from still some tribes today about our hunter-gatherer kind of ancestry, and that we were kind of designed to move, and our normal nutrition and sleep patterns and so forth. Um, there's the famous of Lucy fossil dates back to 3.9 to 2.9 million years ago, and that's a fully bipedal gait, so that's a fully 2-footed gait, and it very closely resembles where we are right now as human beings, and it goes to show that our evolution from that point onwards has been very small. Actually, it's been very little. So we still, for all intents and purposes, have those ancestral genetics. We're still, to some extent, built internally to be and to live this sort of hunter-gatherer, lifestyle. And when I say that, I don't mean we all should, walk around barefoot or, and so forth. Though what I mean is that we are designed to move, and we're designed to sleep, and we're designed with certain nutritional habits in mind. As with most things that we can probably see with society, and as you pointed out in the introduction there's been, a societal and technological evolution that's raced so far ahead of our own genetics that there's what's called this genetic mismatch, that our genes are old genes for this ancestral nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle, but they're not designed for the world that we currently live in, which is largely sedentary, sat down doing a podcast or watching TV or commuting to or from work or sat at a desk at a computer. We know we all spend far, far more time sitting down than maybe we should or than we'd like to. We probably don't get as much exercise as a product of that, and our nutrition habits and so forth have changed around that. So we're kind of it's like our ancestral genes have been dropped into this society where they're just not designed to thrive. And I think the word thrive, it's not that we can't survive, because we can survive, and especially with modern medicine the way it is, we can survive. But we also have so many of these kind of non-communicable diseases like diabetes that we've talked about, like high cholesterol or high blood pressure, and so forth, that we've talked about in the past few podcasts, that we're kind of left with that impact our health span or have left us dependent upon modern medicine. So I guess one of the key things that I wanted to talk about was this rise of civilization, and all the great things about it have left us with this genetic mismatch. But what can we do about it? How can we combat that?
Right. So yeah, that it's a natural question. How can we get back to or closer back to what our genetics dictate is the way we should be thriving? So, yeah, what are your ideas on this? What are the most important things you would tell people?
Yeah, I've broken this down into five key points, or five things, or five lifestyle hacks, if you will, that people can really take action on today or tomorrow or in the immediate effect. So the first of which is movement. Now, we've talked historically about the idea of this 10,000 or 12,000 step approach, and our body is designed to move. We've talked about things like diabetes, and we've talked about depleting glycogen from our muscles and our liver. So when we take in carbohydrates, our body releases insulin. That insulin is a signaling messenger to tell our muscles and our liver to store that carbohydrate, that glucose, as glycogen, and any excess we store as fat. And then if we keep topping up with carbohydrates without depleting those glycogen stores, we just store more and more as fat, and we end up with, overweight or obesity is a big problem. So fundamentally, our body is designed to move. So I love the idea of fitness trackers. I love people tracking their steps on a daily basis, or even just going outside and getting some exercise, or starting the day with a walk or a run or a swim, or doing something that depletes that glycogen store. So my first lifestyle hack is movement. We're designed to move.
Mhm, and I just think of how necessary it is to really plan your movement in our society today. Many people where you live, if it's like where I live, it's very car dependent or automobile heavy and dependent, and so it's very easy to go through multiple days at a time without taking any kind of a walk for any reason, and so, because of the level of convenience we have, it's not built into our everyday life because of our conveniences, and so we do have to schedule that in or plan that in and force it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now is the perfect time for people to sort of embrace some of these healthy ideas that I'm going to talk about today, because we're in the summer. you know, Approach a loved one, a family friend, or a family member, excuse me, or a friend, and ask them if they want to go for a walk. Don't just meet in a coffee shop. Go and grab a coffee and go for a walk. At your lunchtime, don't sit at your desk and carry on working. Take the time to go outside and go for a walk. Look up, look around you, improve your posture, use your muscles, burn some calories. That low level, continued exercise is really what our hunter gathering ancestry was all about. It wasn't all about high effort exercise, it was continued and sustained low level exercise. So, movement is key. So the next hack is whole foods, and I don't think anybody would consider this a lifestyle hack. Our nutritional approach to well-being is incredibly important. But the reality is that our hunter-gathering lifestyle, we ate a variety of things, of plants and animals. Our dietary habits changed through summer and winter as there was seasonal fruit, seasonal vegetables. Um, there was a high nutritional content in what we ate because it was not processed. It was at best minimally processed. And we've now moved to a society where we have, instead of having kind of limited food availability in our hunter-gatherer ancestry, we now have a surplus of food, but it's also a surplus of highly processed food, which is much, much lower in nutrition. Um, and I think this is one of the problems that we see these issues. We see, iron deficiency, anemia. We see growth stunting and shorter stature than our ancestral heritage and things like that. So I think that there's been this sway towards convenience. So the next kind of health hack is nutrition. Let's get back to whole foods. Let's look at what we're putting in our body. If we want our body, I've previously given the example that we might want our body to function like a Ferrari. If we want our body to function at the highest performance that it can do, we want to put in the best quality fuel that we can do.
It's like when you're shopping at the grocery store, the tip that I always tell people is as much as you can stick to the perimeter of the grocery store where the whole foods are and avoid the middle aisles where all of the processed items are, you're doing great. So that's just one way to know if you're choosing whole foods or how many processed foods you might be putting into your shopping cart.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's a great point. So our next point is sunlight. So sunlight is essential to help our circadian rhythm. Our circadian rhythm is basically our body clock through the day. It helps tell us when we should be awake and when we should be asleep. And sunlight is key in kind of overcoming that mid-afternoon slump. So we want to take in sunlight. That's our way of telling our body, you should be awake right now. And it's not the same as artificial light. We know it's not the same as artificial light. We know that sunlight contains nutrients like vitamin D. So we want to get out in the sunlight as much as we can and experience that the right kind of UV rays to tell our body to be awake at those times. And then we can help set our body clock so that we fatigue at the right time in the day and we can sleep during the night. If we can stay awake well during the day, we can sleep well during the night. So daylight and sunlight, I think, is absolutely key.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see very easily how that would match with our ancestral makeup is our ancestors didn't have blackout shades and eye masks to cover up and sleep in. They had to wake up when the sun, kind of came into their peripheral, and they got up and they started hunting their circadian rhythm matched the actual day, so I can definitely see that, and of course, it's gonna transition into probably one thing you're gonna mention soon, which is sleep, and how important that is, and of course, staying on that circadian rhythm is crucial in order to get good sleep.
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right, and that's exactly my next point: sleep. So and if we think about our ancestral heritage and our hunter-gatherer kind of genetics, then they didn't have the electric light bulb. They didn't get to a point in the day where it got too dark and they just turned on a light and they got on with more work, or they then sat in front of blue light, their mobile phones or watching TV or their tablets or anything like that. They were reliant purely upon natural light. And when it got dark, what did they do? They huddled down, they got somewhere safe, and they went to sleep. So they slept, and they slept for a good amount of time. Now, obviously, the amount that they slept varied between summer and winter because of daylight times and daylight hours. But you can imagine the amount of sleep they would have got in the winter, and then the amount of still good quality sleep they would have got in the summer. So sleep is absolutely the next point. When people say to me, really, is there good evidence around the importance of sleep? The first thing that I often say is that, well, sleep deprivation has been used as a method of torture. It's really horrible to think about it, but if sleep deprivation is so toxic to us, then it surely must impress upon us the importance of getting sleep. It fights inflammation, it helps our body's natural processes and our recovery from exercise and our nutritional habits. It helps control our satiety as well. When we are fatigued, our go-to foods will often be carbohydrate heavy. So when you get late into the evening and you're about to turn the TV on and maybe reach for a snack, maybe it's time to think, oh, actually, I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to get some sleep. Going to make sure my body's recovered and refreshed, ready to get up and start the day tomorrow. So, yeah, sleep is the fourth healthy hack.
Mhm. Yeah, if you ever struggle to make that connection between the benefits of sleep and why it's helpful for you, I like the idea of thinking about we all understand how we feel when we don't get enough sleep. Oh my gosh, there's so many problems. The following day, it's, all of the things that you said. I mean, our mood and our energy levels and our appetite and our focus, our recovery is worse. I mean, our immune system is compromised. Yeah, you can be doing everything else right, but if your sleep is not dialed in, it's gonna really sabotage everything else that you're doing right.
Yeah. One of the things that I found personally for me when I'm sleep deprived is I often go to say something and I can't remember the word.
Mm.
So I feel like I and I've maybe created this illusion in my head, but I feel like my vocabulary is somewhat suddenly limited. Like I can't make that connection between my brain and my mouth, or my brain can't look through its back catalogue of words to find the right one. And that's when I kind of go, oh, I'm sleep deprived. I know I am. I also track my sleep on a Garmin watch and things like that. And I think that can be a really great way to do it. But ultimately, just use look at the time and go to sleep, or look at the daylight and go to sleep and things like that. So, and then the final hack, and I'm sure most people watching this podcast will know this, but it's strength training. So it interspersed with this continued low level, low intensity exercise, there were these moments of very hard, very brief, very high effort or high intensity exercise. And that's best likened to strength training in modern society. So we know that strength training obviously increases strength and function and muscle function and functional performance. We know it can add muscle so it retains and rebuilds our muscle mass. We know that muscle action releases myokines, so signaling proteins that can positively affect the other organs in our body, whether it's our liver, our kidneys, our lungs, our brain, so on and so forth. We know it can, fight kind of metabolic disease and metabolic conditions, can reduce chronic pain. There's a really interesting topic called exercise induced hypoalgesia, which we're going to cover in a future podcast. And that's this idea that when we exercise, the increased blood flow helps to release endogenous endorphins that can kind of reduce our pain sensation. So it can be ideal for people with fibromyalgia or low back pain or osteoarthritis, as we've talked about in the past. So strength training and exercise in that form as a short, brief effort is our fifth healthy hack.
I can see, like, we have to force it nowadays. I mean, it was built right into our lifestyle before, right? Lifting heavy things, challenging our muscles, recruiting muscles. It's just very easy to go through life and never really recruit type 2 muscles specifically, or work very hard. So but we're designed for it, and in fact, it helps us in every other way, right? Even pain reduction, the temptation for some people is because I have some pain, I'm gonna avoid strength training, but in fact, it could actually help with pain reduction. Anyway, so it's something we have to force, but the good news is it doesn't take long. We're not designed for long, long bouts of heavy strength training and high intensity strength training. It doesn't have to be a lot of the time. Just a little bit can go a very long way.
Absolutely. The 2 by 20 minutes a week, that kind of frequency, that kind of volume is completely appropriate. That's the sort of duration and time we probably would have hunted for at that intensity, whether it's throwing or climbing or sprinting or jumping, lifting heavy things, like you said, Amy. It was short. It was brief, but it was intense. And what that typically would have been around was a hunt and a kill. And then, of course, that meat supply, that food supply would have lasted, potentially a couple of days, and then repeat the process. So it's not every day. It's not about going and lifting weights twice a day. That's certainly not what I'm encouraging. But finding a way to incorporate that into your weekly schedule, I think, is really important from a health perspective.
Totally agree. So if you're listening to this and you've heard these tips, so just to recap: movement, daily movement, sunlight, getting sunlight each day, whole food eating, adequate sleep, and strength training. Which of those areas, if you're listening to this, are you doing the best in? And which of these areas could you augment in your own personal life in order to thrive? We've talked in a previous podcast about this idea of a health continuum, on one end being, sickness, disease, very poor health, And on the other end, being thriving. I'm as healthy as I can be. I'm not sick, but also I'm feeling as best as I can be. I'm optimal. I'm thriving, right? And so if you were to place yourself somewhere on this continuum, even in the middle where you're not actively sick, but you're not feeling as great as you can, um, there are simple things that you can do to feel your best. And focusing just on these 5 alone, it's amazing how much better you could feel. And so I challenge you, if you're listening to this today, to consider which of these areas um, to augment personally for yourself in order to feel your best. Because when you feel your best, you are your best for those around you, and you can give your best to the world, which is what we want. Um, awesome. Thank you for breaking this down for us, Dr. Fisher. Do you have any final things you'd like to leave the listener with today to encourage them with this topic?
No, I don't. I think you nailed it with that last statement of, if you feel your best, you can give your best to the world. We all want to be the best version of ourselves. And even if we do feel great, then maybe improving our sleep or our movement or our nutrition can make us even better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate you hanging in with us till the end of this episode. I hope that you came away with it with an actionable thing that you can do this week to help yourself feel better and to also thereby help others around you. We'll see you next time on the podcast. I hope you remember, strength changes everything. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. You can submit a question or connect with the show at strengthchangeseverything.com. Join us next week for another episode, and be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss another episode. Here's to you and your best health.